Let's also tell you that Nigeria's defense headquarters says troops of Operation Codename Delta Safe have recovered crude oil worth over 1 billion naira from oil theft and rescued 76 kidnapped victims in the South-South region of the country in the last 2 weeks. Director of the Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, revealed that the military operations have curtailed terrorists and other criminal activities across the geopolitical zones of Nigeria. Furthermore, he stated that the Nigerian military also neutralized 151 terrorists and arrested 501 criminals across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, adding that the upsurge in anti-illegal oil bunkering operations by troops of Operation Delta Safe in the South-South region has yielded desirable outcomes. Now to join me unpack the latest development, Kikelomo Shodeko, a security intelligence and risk consultant, joins us on the news now from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Kikelomo, for joining us on the news.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you join us. Now, Kikelomo, crude oil and liquefied petroleum gas are moved across vast areas from where they are to refined or exported as the case may be. Are there no tech-based methods like monitoring the pipeline pressures that can be used as a means of knowing when vandalism on the pipeline is happening?
There are definitely. So we're still using the crude methods, just like the crude oil, right? There definitely are, and one of those big things is using drones, right? Drones are very, very key aspect of monitoring now, and we have countries that have already started using it and have been helpful to them. And I think Nigeria needs to begin to look towards this aspect to be able to at least curb oil theft, curb vandalism of our pipelines, and actually proper monitoring. Because currently we are still using the crude method, and it won't last long. It's not working anymore. We need a new method, which will be looking towards tech. Definitely drones. Thank you.
Kikelomo, you did mention proper monitoring, and we understand that aerial monitoring or surveillance are used extensively in many of these fields. So why have they not been deployed to combat theft and vandalism of the pipelines?
That would be an answer above my pay grade. But interestingly, what we need to understand is this: until there is a buy-in by the people in charge of these things, there will still be this methods used. So who is supposed to sell the buy-in that, guys, we need to begin to use tech to monitor this? So who are the people that should be navigating these waters of convincing the Navy, the Army, the president, the vice president, whoever is in charge? They need to know that these methods will not work any longer. So now we need to have people that are lobbying for this type of things to actually make this type of thing work. So we need tech. How do we get them to understand that tech is important? Who are the people? Who are the stakeholders in this case? Those are the policy makers, the decision makers. How do we get them to change their minds on the current method they're using? So those are the people that will lobby into that space to be able to do that. But it's not like they don't know completely, but it's just that it's so difficult to get their buy-in into it. And so that's where we need that communication levels to go. So we need to translate the fact that tech is important for whatever advancement we are trying to put into security whatsoever. Thank you.
All right. Now, just like every other sector in Nigeria, we have also heard that some security agents and agents of governments generally in the oil sector have been compromised. How serious and/or how credible are these claims?
Well, we can see it already from the police force itself, right? We can see it in different aspects already in the country, in different sectors, parastatals, ministries. We can see that happening already. So it is not far-fetched that we are having incidents in which we have security operators already also compromised, like you said. So we've had incidents in which some of this naval personnel are being caught on vessels that are moving this crude, right? So it's not a new thing. We know already the foundation of our countries, right? Of our country, pardon me. So we know that this is the reality. So for me, whatever war against oil theft that we are going into, right? We should understand that we are not talking only about the people at the bottom of the food chain. We are talking about the people at the top of the food chain, right? And so until we are able to properly filter, I would always say it, and that's been my stance, wherever the leader goes is where the followers will follow. If we have leaders, that is the people in the defense that are known to be incorruptible, that as they have their stance, they're also filtering through people that work for them, doing the proper checks, doing the proper balances. Then this so-called war against crude oil theft, we are just picking the low-hanging fruit. We are not really tackling those that are really, really like in charge of all those things. So that's really what I will say concerning that.
All right, Kikelomo, now we've looked at the solutions that the government can probably adhere to ensure that these things are put in check. But as a security intelligence and risk consultant that you are, can you please elaborate on the key provisions or the changes that you are advocating for in the amendment to the Fiscal Responsibility Act? And how do you think that these changes can contribute to greater fiscal transparency and responsibility in Nigeria?
Yeah, that's all about the money, right? What is coming in, what is going out, how we are spending it, how we are not spending it, right? So these things are very critical. So the Fiscal Responsibility Act is an act that actually amplifies the need for intelligence in the first place. So it amplifies the need for, we start out first to know that what are we spending our money on? What should we be spending our money on? Who are the people spending the money? How are they spending the money? Like integrating that, then having the conversation of what money has been spent, which area or which sector is not spending the money properly. How are they spending their money? The allocation that comes to them, how are they going about it? Then when at the end of the day, after all those analyses, right, we can now ask the questions of, okay, so who are the individuals we are seeing more in the line of fire? Are we reporting the amounts that is actually spent, or we are doubling the amount? So, for example, when we have issues of, they say they gave a contract to a company, for example, right? Then they tell us that the contract is worth 1 naira, for example. Then we find out that they are doing the same contract, maybe in another country, or even in another state within the same country for a lesser price, say 50 kobo, right? What went wrong? Why do we have an extra? So the Fiscal Responsibility Act helps us to filter through all those nitty-gritty details that we necessarily might not be interested in. So for me, that's like the exciting thing about intelligence when it comes to those types of things. The intelligence field comes out really bold in those types of situations because you can see the patterns of how money is spent. You can see the patterns of how contracts are given and why we seem to have maybe higher amount here or for this state or for this country different from maybe another country. So I would use an example of, say, we want to build a rail in Nigeria. They tell us that is 1 naira. Then they build the same rail in, say, Benin Republic, our neighbor, and they built it for 20 kobo. How is it 1 naira? That Fiscal Responsibility Act, the processes within it, the procedures within it, the policies within it will let us see clearly how those things went wrong. Either someone padded it or someone didn't pad it, or the money that we were expecting is not what we are spending, or we borrowed the money and so on and so forth. So for me, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, like I always say, we have all the wonderful policies, we have everything on paper. If only we could just follow it. Thank you.
Security intelligence and risk consultant Kikelomo Shodeko, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you join us as well.